Okay, so we're going to pick up the story here. I'm a little bit into this job so far. This is a 2003 R53. It's got about 150,000 miles on it. Very reliable to date, but you know, it's 12 years old, and with that many miles, you're going to have a couple of oil leaks. So right now, I have a leak in my crank position sensor, oil pan gasket, and also in the oil filter housing unit. So we're going to be repairing all that, and while I'm in there, probably going to add a couple of performance parts as well. But story picks up here. The car is in what they call front end service mode, and basically what that means is you're taking the front of the car and giving yourself enough room to work behind the radiator and the condenser here for the AC. So a real quick story. There's a lot of videos out there on how to do this. The way it plays out is this: you take the front bumper cover off, you take the actual bumper off itself. That's pretty straightforward. There's 5 nuts, a couple of bolts and some nuts that are around this area of the car right in here. That pulls off. You take the bumper flange off as well from underneath. There's 2 16 millimeters and 1 10 millimeter in the front. And the only thing you need to do is you don't want to take all this off and have it hang by itself. So I went to Pep Boys, bought 2 8 millimeter 4-inch bolts, and you put them in the screws that you remove when you take the bumper plate off itself. And then basically this just slides out on top of it. You disconnect all the connections necessary. Like, for example, you want to disconnect the horn. I've got a couple of other things going. I run a set of Hella driving and fog lights, so I've got my relays, which are down here. Disconnect them. Also have a brake duct cooling kit in here, so I had to take that off. That's what these hoses are for. And the same on the other side. Relatively straightforward. There's 4 plastic clips on the inside of the wheel well here that you have to remove. You know, if you're going to remove them and they're in pretty crappy condition, go spend the money and get some new ones. But that's kind of where we're at right now on this project. As I get more into it, I'll be filling you in. Get back to the video. Okay, so now that I have access to the underneath and doing some inspection as to where these oil leaks are, first thing you'll notice a lot of seepage down the front of the engine here, front of the car. So chances are that crank position sensor O-ring is bad. And that is all the way up there. You can see I've got the light shining on it right now. That's what has to come out. I've got an O-ring, relatively simple thing to change. There's a plug on the front of it, no issue there. Also, there's a lot of seepage here underneath the crank pulley itself. So I probably have a main seal that has to be replaced there, and we'll be pulling that off as well to replace that. Probably when I'm in there doing that, probably put on another pulley, maybe a lightweight pulley. We'll see how that goes, but I'm going to have to replace that seal. Going to replace the pan gasket as well, and we'll take a look at what we've got leaking back here too. There's a little bit of seepage there. It's probably from the gasket, from the pan itself. So that's the latest. Okay, so here's the crank position sensor, and you can see right here there's the O-ring. Maybe you can't really tell, but it looks kind of crushed and old, and it was real cruddy when I pulled it out. Here's a new one. We're just going to basically take a pick tool, take the O-ring off of here, put the new one in, put this back, replug it back in, and that should be one leak fixed. Okay, so picking up the story, we have the pan off. You can see that here. There's the gasket. Obviously this was off before at one time because there's a bunch of gasket sealer there. This is what it looks like underneath the car. The interesting thing is you'll see there's seepage here, which is probably coming out of the main seal, the crank seal there. So we're going to replace that. And being that we're going to replace that, we'll see if we can't get us a different pulley on the front there. Maybe 2% on that pulley. But that's where we are as of right now. There's the AC compressor. So we'll pick it up next time around. Okay, so here we are. We pick up the story. As you can see, The pan is back on, gaskets in there, just some information. There's a couple of 10 millimeters that hold us up and two 15s. The torque values on a 10 millimeter is 23 foot-pounds and the 15s is 63 foot-pounds. AC compressor's back on, lower engine mount is through there, and I did a couple of other things while I was underneath here, so I'll pick that up on the next little short. Okay, so now from underneath the car, a couple of things you'll notice. Took off the factory header so you could see the exhaust manifold up there. And while we did that, let me see if I could get a picture up there. I changed out the oil filter housing gasket while I was here. It looked like I had a leak on that as well. And there's a couple of bolts that, without the header being in there, made it so much easier. I can only imagine how hard it is if you don't take out the header. So while I was here, we did that. I've got to clean up the exhaust manifold a little bit more. We'll be putting on the Milltek header. While I was down here, we also found a little leak in the power steering power steering pump tube there. We're going to be replacing that next, and that's that. Pick it up after we get that going. So a little while back, there was a recall on this particular model, the R53s, where you could get the power steering pump replaced if it was a problem. And mine was starting to whine, and it started to get a little bit hard when you would turn. So they did replace the pump. So the pump and the fan have been replaced, but what's not covered underneath that warranty is the lines themselves. So I don't know if you can see here, there's the actual line up there. I've got a lot of seepage coming off of it. You can see all the power steering fluid around here on a new pump. So we're going to be replacing that line from the reservoir to the actual pump itself. Going to drain it. Got a new line, put one in, reclamp it, and refill the reservoir. Pick it up after that. Okay, so here's where we're at. We have the power steering line. Let me see if I can get a good angle on it here. We have the power steering line pump from the reservoir to the pump replaced. So that's all done. The other thing you'll notice is we have the header back on. That's actually a Milltek header. Cleaned up the manifold area there, put the gasket in, reassembled that. So we have that on and in place. Let me reposition here. I'll show you what else we've got done. So the tensioner was redone. You may be able to see it there. There it is. There's a tensioner, factory tensioner. Didn't upgrade that, but I did put a tensioner stop on it just in case. I figured, I was in there, might as well do that. So that was done up. So we have the pulley on. I started to say, so when I pulled the factory pulley off, I actually found out that that seal wasn't leaking. A lot of the oil around there must have been from the leak in the front of the engine. So we never really replaced that seal, figuring, we certainly didn't want to ask for any trouble if it started to leak. But that's on now. The pulley's on, tensioner's on, new belt is on. Always replace the belt. It's a good thing. Actually had a little bit of an issue with a previous belt. So that's replaced, and we're now starting to put it back together. Okay, here's a newly installed Milltek header along with MagnaFlow exhaust. So start up in a couple of blips.